Welcome back to a Book a Day podcast. And I've got another wonderful book with me today. And it's a book whose subject has been really close to my heart personally. The book is called Bibliotherapy: The Healing Power of Reading. It's written by Bijal Shah, and as the title and the subtitles suggest, it's really about how we can heal ourselves through reading, through books. That's essentially what bibliotherapy is. Biblio is about books, and therapy, we all understand. So, the idea here is through reading, we have a therapeutic experience. That's how we can simply put it. But there are different components to it. It's not just that you read anything and you'll have a therapeutic experience. So there are a number of things about reading, and specifically reading a book, that contribute to this therapeutic experience. The first one is when we are reading mindfully, when we are focusing on the language, on reading one sentence, one word at a time. And that itself, just like observing an art or listening to music without really thinking too much ahead, uh, we have this experience of reading a sentence, and slowly, sentence by sentence, we read the entire paragraph or a page. That itself is a comforting experience. Just the reading mindfully, that is. We're not focusing so much on what kind of contents there are, but just the act of reading itself. The second component is about content, what really it is about. And when you read something, you absorb information, you absorb the ideas. It's very similar to listening. So when you listen to something or read something, the ideas go into your head and you understand that. Maybe you are hearing a story, listening to a story rather, or you are listening to a powerful philosophical idea. And as that information goes into your head, you start imagining things. It builds a world in your mind, it evokes certain emotions. So, all that process of gathering information and then processing it in your head, that process also contributes to this experience. Then the third aspect is when we are doing some kind of literary journaling. That is, when we are reading a book, we are absorbing the information, but we are writing certain things down on a piece of paper. The idea that we have discovered, or something that we have learned, something we would like to remember for later. So that kind of journaling goes on. And the fourth one is purely writing, writing outside the book, just any of your emotions, expressing them through words and expressions, putting them on a piece of paper. That's also a part of this therapy. Now let's briefly talk about the history of bibliotherapy. And like most ideas that we have today, this one also has its roots in ancient Greece. We have talked about so many ancient Greek philosophers, and that's where we find the origins of bibliotherapy. In fact, that's where you find the origins of therapy through any kind of art. For example, Aristotle said something about how art evokes emotions in our minds. So he said this about tragic art, how it evokes similar emotions, that of a tragedy, in our minds, and we can feel the pain, the tragedy of the characters that are being portrayed in a play or in a story. We feel those emotions. It's a kind of a catharsis, which then leads to two important ideas. One is self-reflection, second is self-knowledge. So first, once you experience the emotions of a character, then you reflect on them, you reflect on your own self, then you gain deeper knowledge about your own self, about your own emotions, your own psyche. So that was the view from Aristotle. Then there was also the Stoic view. The Stoic view, of course, comes from the Stoic philosophers, where they were focusing so much on the mind. They were not focused on the events outside the mind, whatever is going on in the world. They were focusing on how we are interpreting the events in our life. That to them formed the mental picture, and that really decided how we are feeling about anything in our life. So we might go through failure, for example, but if we interpret that event in a, say, in some kind of a positive way, then according to the Stoic view, we are not going to feel bad about it. It's just the mental narrative we have in our heads. If we have some kind of positive narrative about it, we are always going to feel good about a lot of things. And this is something that also the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, in today's world focuses on. That the narrative we have in our heads, how we interpret any event in our life, how we channelize those thoughts, what do we do them, how we understand them, just similar ideas. Then the book also tells us about Michel de Montaigne. Montaigne, the kind of a creator of the essay writing form. And he devised this wonderful form where he was writing personal essays. He was journaling his thoughts down in the form of essays. And I think it's a really powerful medium for anyone who wants to have a therapeutic experience through writing, where what you do, you pour your heart, your emotions on the piece of paper. Once the emotions are out of your head and they are on the paper, you are in a much better position to understand them, to untangle them, to make sense of them. So that way, a lot of clarity comes. Now, this is really powerful and a straightforward way to heal ourselves, to work on our emotions. We bring out the abstract that is in our heads, the abstract emotion, something that we are not really able to understand right away. But then we transform that into form of words, and things get much better, as you'll notice. So something that you should try, write it down, something like a personal essay, and you'll realize how powerful or how therapeutic this act of writing can be. Then the other way to find healing through reading is poetry. And a lot of times what poetry does is it really kindles our imagination. It hits very differently from any other form of writing. It just feels like more powerful, and it sprouts those seeds in the head where just imagination lights up. And that's why it hits differently. It's much more impactful. At the same time, um, certain kind of poetry, for example, William Wordsworth, where he's generally wrote a lot about nature, its healing power. That kind of poetry can really console us, comfort us. And to give you an example, let me recite a poem by William Wordsworth. It's called It's a Beauteous Evening. Let me recite, and I hope you'll enjoy this. So here it goes. It is a beauteous evening, calm and free. The holy time is quiet as a nun, breathless with adoration. The broad sun is sinking down in its tranquility. The gentleness of heaven broods over the sea. Listen, the mighty being is awake, and doth with his eternal motion make a sound like thunder everlastingly. Dear child, dear girl, that walkest with me here, if thou appear untouched by solemn thought, thy nature is not therefore less divine. Thou liest in Abraham's bosom all the year, and worships at the temple's inner shrine, God being with thee when we know it not. And this is where I, not just in poetry, but different forms of writing, I find some kind of mindful experience, the experience of mindfulness rather. What it does is, through writer's own observations, he makes us see different things which might have gone unnoticed to us, whether it's our surroundings, nature, the details around us. And that itself feels very enlightening. And that's the power of poetry or writing in general. It tells us things which we might have missed otherwise. And sometimes what poetry does is it raises some interesting questions and also gives us answers, as you find a lot of times in Walt Whitman's poetry. So let me recite this short poem by Walt Whitman. It's called O Me, O Life. O me, O life, of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, of myself forever reproaching myself, for who more foolish than I, and who more faithless? Of eyes that vainly crave the light of the object's mean, of the struggle ever renewed, of the poor results of all, of the plodding and sordid crowds I see around me, of the empty and useless years of the rest, with the rest me intertwined. The question, O me, so sad, recurring, what good amid these, O me, O life? And the answer, that you are here, that life exists, an identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. Such a powerful idea expressed here. Talks about the meaning, the basic question of life. What are we doing here? What am I doing here? And such a beautiful answer in just a couple of lines. That's really the magic of poetry. Then we have probably the most important form of bibliotherapy, where we read novels. And it's a much more recent form of writing, but I would say it's probably the most powerful. Because through novels, we get a chance to understand a character really deeply. We understand what Anna Karenina was going through in her life, in her relationships. And a lot of times we get a chance to understand a particular character, and then in that character we see ourselves. And that's really a powerful thing. We can see our journeys being portrayed by a certain character, and through that a couple of things happen. One, we can experience the whole thing, our own emotions, we can experience that journey. But the second and more important thing, we can do that at a safer distance. With ourselves, when we are going through certain emotions, we cannot have that distance. So we're just reacting to emotions, and we are unable to understand a lot of things. That's where we need certain distance from ourselves, and to be able to understand those emotions, those troubles, those psychological issues. This is generally what we do in therapy. We, with the help of our therapist, we try to take a step back, look at our problems, observe them, and analyze them, and come up with different answers. That's something it naturally happens when you read a novel. And as I said, through so many different characters, we get to experience the ups and downs of life, and it just brings out so many details and things from the unconscious, something that would be very hard for us to bring out in a normal conversation, sometimes even with a therapist. That can be a real challenge, but stories do that to us. And that's what who we are. We are storytelling creatures. Stories impact us, they impact our psyche in a really deeper way. And that's what really bibliotherapy is. It's a form of an art therapy which leverages the power of stories to heal. That's all, simply speaking. What's important here is the magic, the real magic of bibliotherapy lies in its relationship that is formed between you, the reader, and the writing that is on the page or paper. And then the reflection of thoughts, feelings, observations, lessons, all those things that the writing provokes. And eventually, you can do the daily journaling practice to understand, or you can take help of a bibliotherapist or some other therapist to go through that healing process. That's the idea of bibliotherapy. So just like there is the normal therapy, which is pretty much like talking care, bibliotherapy is much more like reading care. And it's much more natural than I would say in the normal form of therapy. Because you follow kind of the similar things. You identify, first of all, certain emotions, then you see their impact on yourself, you understand them better, and then finally, with the help of a therapist, you gain certain insights and you work on them. All of that takes place in bibliotherapy, but a lot of times it just happens on its own. You're not putting an effort, you are not really taking help of the therapist, although sometimes you might do that. But it just happens so naturally. When you read a story, you can automatically identify certain emotions, and you can automatically feel the catharsis within you. You can feel that rage or sadness or different kind of emotions inside you. And then you, since they're not really your emotions, you can have that safe distance between yourself and the character. So then you can understand that character's journey better, even better than your own journey, because then you're not so heavily emotionally invested, not so much insecure. You can understand a character from the outside, something that you cannot do with yourself, no matter how hard you try. Your therapist can do that, but you can't do that looking at yourself from outside. You get a glimpse of it when you work with your therapist, but you can't do that constantly. With a character, with a story, you can do that. And then you get the insights, you get the clarity, the understanding. And that's where the real work is done. So that's clearly the foundation or the very basics of bibliotherapy. Now, in the next couple of episodes, we'll go through certain examples, more details on how bibliotherapy actually works. And I hope you'll keep following and keep listening and gain some interesting insights on bibliotherapy, because let's face it, all of us, we love books, all of us understand how powerful and impactful reading can be. So let's just take this next step and discover the healing or the therapeutic powers of reading. So, thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll join in the next episode as well as we continue to explore this book. Thank you very much.